Welcome back to Ben's Top 12. And when I was a kid, some news stations stopped before they spoke. Here's a video that lots of my fans have been waiting a long time for. Well, seeing as how I myself have been wanting to do it, I thought it would be great to give it to you folks as a special Christmas present from me. Christmas is over! As a special late Christmas present from me to you. So, let's get this post-holiday season going. Here are my top 12 animation influences. Number 12, John Kricfalusi. Here's somebody who gets a bad rap from classic animation buffs. Anyway, John K. is the creator of Ren and Stimpy. Around the time when this show was about to come on, cartoons were nothing but 30-minute toy commercials. So, this cartoon came along and broke all of the rules. It pushed what you could get away with on cartoons at the time, and it got to the point where John K. got fired because he kept being edgy when Nick told him to stop. That's what I admire most about John. He's not afraid to break any rules that stand in the way of his creativity not being met. I can take a lot from that because when I'm making cartoons, I don't want to hear any complaining from parents or the network. If I do, body parts will be disconnected. Plus, John K. told his animators that he never wanted them to put the same facial expressions on his characters. I'm all for having variety when it comes to the animation of characters. However, John K. doesn't have a clean slate. He was responsible for the Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon. The naked women were nice, but Ren and Stimpy really didn't need that show added to their resume. It was freaking gross. Anyway, John K. is the bad boy of animated TV shows, and I looked up to him for that. Number 11, Lauren Faust. Sadly, the only woman on this list. Anyway, Lauren helped her husband, Craig McCracken, develop two of Cartoon Network's most successful shows, The Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Then, it came time for her to create her own show, and Ponies was born. What inspires me about Lauren is, she is who I think of when I think of strong female characters. When it comes to Ponies, she gives several different character traits that you don't normally see from female cartoon characters. I myself would love to have female characters in my cartoons. I want them to be made exactly how Lauren makes them. Plus, I've noticed something. Have you ever noticed in every show Lauren's helped develop, all the main characters have gone crazy at least once in the span of one of them? Kind of weird, huh? She must love it when characters have nervous breakdowns. Can't say I blame her. It's rather hilarious when that happens. Anyway, Lauren Faust has taught me that female cartoon characters are more than just eye candy. Number 10, Max and Dave Fleischer. The original bad boys of animation. Max and Dave were the gentlemen responsible for bringing characters like Betty Boop and Popeye to the world of animation and making them known worldwide. Warner Brothers often gets credit for being the first animation studio to stray away from the Disney formula and focus more on gags and wackiness. Actually, it was the Fleischers that almost gave Disney a run for its money. Their characters were the exact opposite of Disney's. They had a New York feel to them, and the characters were grittier and tougher compared to Disney's happier and softer characters. I take influences from them because they were able to get a lot of gags out of simple storylines. Not to mention, they had a lot of edgy stuff in their cartoons. They were responsible for the first sexual harassment ever shown on film, as there's a Betty Boop cartoon where she's sexually harassed by a villain. Man, these guys aren't afraid of anything. That's basically how I think. I'm not afraid of offending anybody when it comes to how I make my cartoons. Where some people may stop, I say keep going, and I have the Fleischers to thank for that way of thinking. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into South Park territory. Number 9, Matt Groening. How can I not include this guy? You all know him as the creator of The Simpsons and Futurama. I take a lot of influence from Matt for the sheer fact that he helped make animation respected again. Before The Simpsons, animation was seen as just something to keep kids quiet for an afternoon, but when this show came around, people's views on cartoons began to change. People now saw that animation could be made just as much for adults as it could be made for children. That's one of the reasons why I love The Simpsons so much. It's a show that a whole family could sit down and enjoy. If they're not a family of right-wing idiots that support the PTC. I also like how Matt takes a lot of influence from his family where he grew up. Did you know that every member of the Simpsons family shares a name with one of Matt Groening's family members? It's true. Marge was Matt's mom, Homer was his dad, Lisa was his sister, Maggie was his other sister, and Bart, according to Matt, is a caricature of himself when he was young. Also, Matt's recently claimed that the Simpsons live in Springfield, Oregon. However, I still believe they live in Springfield, Illinois. I mean, for God's sakes, Mr. Burns looks exactly like a guy who runs a power plant around here. Anyway, Matt Groening is somebody who taught me that it's possible to make a cartoon that both kids and adults could watch and appreciate. Number 8. Chuck Jones. I think it's automatically mandatory to have Chuck Jones on your influence list if you want to be an animator. Brace yourselves, he's only the first Looney Tunes director to make the list. Chuck Jones was quite possibly the most famous of all the Looney Tunes directors, as he's responsible for such classics as What's Opera Doc, One Froggy Evening, and Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. Although I do find Chuck Jones to be a little overrated, I still take some influence from him. What I take from him is the subtlety in his cartoons. One example I could think of is Operation Rabbit, where Wile E. Coyote politely tells Bugs that he's going to eat him. When Bugs denies, he simply walks back to his cave and quietly asks, "Why do they always want to do it the hard way?" That's stinking hilarious. I believe that the two best elements of comedy are timing and subtlety, and Chuck Jones brought that to the world of animation. When other directors were making cartoons with characters drastically reacting to things, Chuck was making cartoons where characters take things lightly, and for that, I'm inspired by that kind of characterization. Number 7. Jay Ward. He's not really an animator, but he made an impact when it comes to cartoons. Jay Ward was the creator of TV shows like Rocky and Bullwinkle and George of the Jungle. These were two Saturday morning cartoons that actually gave a few adults excuses to wake up every Saturday morning. I'm influenced by Jay Ward because when he was producing his cartoons, he wasn't in the frame of mind that he was producing cartoons. He felt he was producing a well-written radio program. And that's one of Rocky and Bullwinkle's strong points. The dialogue is well written, and the jokes are so clever that it makes up for the low-budget animation. That's what I take from Jay Ward, his writing. He was able to get satirical and clever jokes even when these shows were at their weirdest. Not to mention, him and his writing staff were able to make puns funny. So, Jay Ward was the master when it came to clever gags in his cartoons. Number 6. Robert McKimson. He started out as an animator for Looney Tunes, who was eventually promoted to the director, where he created the likes of Foghorn Leghorn, Speedy Gonzales, and Taz. Most Looney Tunes fans don't like McKimson's cartoons as much as they do the ones of the other directors, but McKimson made his cartoons in a way that I find really interesting. McKimson's cartoons didn't depend on slapstick like Freeling's did, and they didn't rely on style like Chuck's did. They mostly depended on characteristics of characters. In a McKimson cartoon, the personality of his characters is what shines through in his cartoons. For example, take Foghorn Leghorn. All Foggy does in most of his cartoons is jabber like a southern colonel. However, his characteristic is so strong, he comes off as hilarious due to the fact that he won't shut the heck up. That's what I love about McKimson's cartoons. He felt that he could get a laugh out of his characters by them just being themselves. They didn't have to blow up with dynamite or be whacked with the hammer. They just needed to be, well, funny by themselves. That's a special talent that McKimson had that I think few Looney Tunes fans fail to realize. Number 5. Frank Tashlin. One of the lesser-known Looney Tunes directors. Frank started out as a Looney Tunes director, directing some of the studio's wackiest and funniest cartoons of the 40s, and later went on to direct Jerry Lewis and Bob Hope comedies. It was Tashlin that directed my favorite Looney Tunes cartoon of all time, Porky Pig's Feet. I constantly study that cartoon, trying to figure out what there is about it that makes it so funny. I can say that I've made progress. Tashlin seemed to specialize in making body movements to characters funny. There are a handful of scenes in that cartoon where the animation done on Daffy is a gag by itself. Then there's Tashlin's trademark, speed. His cartoons have got to be the fastest cartoons ever made. One moment, a character could be sitting still, and then zoom! It's the speed of light. Other directors tried their hand at speed, but it was Tashlin that had it the quickest and crispest timed. I take from that because I burst out laughing when characters zoom all of a sudden, and I have Frank Tashlin to thank for that. Number 4. Bill Hanna and Joseph Barbera, mostly for their Tom and Jerry cartoons. Bill and Joe were, of course, the creators of Tom and Jerry, and they went on to create the TV cartoon revolution, creating some of the greatest TV cartoons ever made, and some that were not so great. What I take from Bill and Joe is the physical gags in their Tom and Jerry cartoons. They are some of the most hilarious and most violent gags ever put on film, and I take a lot from them. Seeing as how Tom and Jerry rarely spoke, most of the humor in their cartoons came from visual gags, so most of the effort was put into them. It's the attention to detail put in these gags that make them so great. For example, in one cartoon, a shovel hits Tom in the face, and his face forms the shape of a shovel. It's the timing and the result that makes the gag great. So, whenever I need ideas for clever ways to hurt any of my characters, I think of Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera's Tom and Jerry cartoons. Number 3. Bob Clampett. Yeah, if you know my taste in cartoons, you would know this guy's going to be on the list. Bob Clampett was the Looney Tunes director who made, without a doubt, the wackiest cartoons in the studio's history. What I take from Clampett is, what's not to take from him? Well, I'll get more specific. In his cartoons, you could throw reality out the window, because anything was possible in them. For example, in the cartoon Kitty Cornered, there's one point where Porky yanks on a cat that has a hold of a stuffed moose head. As Porky keeps pulling on the cat's grip on the moose is so strong that it actually pulls a moose right out of the wall. The moose then does a little chuckle and hops away. It's gags like that which make Clampett's cartoons great. I take that kind of wackiness that Clampett is known for, because he went to levels that other directors were afraid to go. Number 2. Walt Disney. Yeah, kind of predictable. Anyway, Walt Disney was... Wait, if you don't know who Walt Disney is, then you're watching the wrong video. Anyway, Walt Disney was... Well, he was stinking Walt Disney. He was responsible for making animation more than just something for us to laugh at and enjoy. He turned it into a way to educate us, touch us, and inspire us. Although Walt Disney rarely directed anything that a studio produced, I can still take some influences from him. For one thing, it was him that was famous for saying, "If you can dream it, you can do it." That quote alone is probably the most inspiring thing anyone can say. If you just keep following your dreams, then you'll be able to be successful with whatever it is you want to be. Also, I take influence from Walt Disney because he was the voice of his most famous creation, Mickey Mouse. I think Walt was actually the first time a creator voiced his own character. That is inspiring because I myself would like to voice some of my own creations, and Walt is somebody I think of who specialized at it. Anyway, there are several more things I could say about Walt, but I would have to write a book about it. I think I've got the basics down. Bottom line, Walt Disney was somebody that I admire and look up to when I think of my animation career. In fact, I think most animators would consider him their biggest influence, but I still have one more spot to fill. Number 1. Tex Avery. I know you all saw this coming. Tex Avery was a cartoon director whose resume contains creating Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck for Warner Brothers, creating Droopy Dog and Screwy Squirrel for MGM, and developing Chilly Willy for Walter Lantz Studios. What I take from Tex Avery is... everything! Since I was a kid, Tex Avery's cartoons were always my favorite of any of the cartoons that Cartoon Network used to show on shows like Toonheads and the Acme Hour. He had a way of making cartoons that no other director from or after his time have come close to matching. He was a master of timing, with his gags always coming at the right time. He was a master of exaggeration, with characters always overreacting in the most hilarious ways. He was the master of wild takes, with his cartoons having the funniest facial reactions in animation history. And above all, he was the master of cartoons. When I think of cartoons, Tex Avery cartoons are the best example I can think of. His cartoons are aware that they are cartoons, and are going to be nothing more and nothing less. They constantly let the viewers know that they know the audience is out there, and even kill some of the audience members on occasion if they get in the character's way. What is also great about Tex Avery is his way of making cartoons. He wasn't big on characters, and he felt that you can get a good character out of almost anything if you just do something good with them. He basically came up with gags and ideas that he could put in his cartoons, and built cartoons and characters around them. A little interesting fact, it's been said that Tex himself was the writer and director for almost all of his cartoons. His storyman Heck Allen said that the only thing he ever did was storyboard ideas that Tex himself came up with. That is incredible. I want to live by that way of cartoon making. When I make cartoons, I want to write and direct every episode of every animated show I create. I feel that I'm the one that understands my characters best, so I think it fits me best to do all the dirty work. Finally, there's Tex's famous quote, "In a cartoon, you can do anything." I've got nothing else to say. That sums him up perfectly. So, there are my top 12 animators that I take my biggest influences from. I hope you enjoyed it and got to see what I look for when it comes to cartoons. Anyway, I'm Ben, and I'm signing out. I'm going to go write my personal statement for my associate's degree in fine arts.